Discipline is the foundation upon which greatness is built. In a world overflowing with distractions, temptations, and noise, the disciplined individual stands apart, not because they are more talented, but because they have mastered the art of self-control. The Stoics understood this more deeply than most. They knew that the path to fulfillment and freedom lay not in indulgence, but in restraint. In the quiet hours before the world stirs, in the resistance to fleeting pleasures, in the courage to face discomfort without complaint, that is where true strength is found. Discipline is not punishment. It is not rigidity for the sake of being hard. It is not the suppression of emotion or the rejection of joy. It is clarity in action. It is living in alignment with one's principles regardless of circumstances. Discipline is doing what you said you'd do long after the mood you said it in has faded. It is not driven by emotion. It is guided by reason. It is not motivated by approval. It is grounded in purpose. The Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, were not removed from the world, sitting in quiet contemplation without responsibility. They were soldiers, slaves, emperors. They lived among chaos, faced loss, betrayal, and temptation. And yet, they chose discipline over despair, control over chaos, principle over pleasure. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, wrote to himself nightly in a war-torn tent, reminding himself to remain just, rational, and steadfast. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary, because the cost of undisciplined leadership is not only personal ruin, it is societal collapse. Epictetus, born a slave, lived in chains, physically and socially bound, yet declared that no man could enslave his mind. He said that freedom begins the moment we take full responsibility for our thoughts, desires, and actions. He did not call for rebellion against others. He called for mastery of the self. Discipline, he taught, is the gateway to liberation. Not just from external circumstances, but from the internal chaos that plagues most lives. In the modern world, we are flooded with stimuli designed to hijack our attention, manipulate our cravings, and weaken our will. Notifications pull us in every direction. Entertainment seduces us into passive consumption. Comfort dulls our edge, but the Stoic blueprint does not bend to the culture of convenience. It demands that we rise above it. The Stoic does not ask what feels good. He asks what is right. The Stoic does not say, I can't help it. He says, it is within my power to choose. This mindset is the seed of discipline, and like any seed, it must be watered with deliberate action. Discipline begins in the smallest acts. The moment you wake up and your body says, sleep a little longer, and your higher self says, no, we rise. The moment you reach for your phone out of boredom, and instead you choose to reflect in silence. The moment you feel the pull to argue, to indulge, to escape, and instead you pause, breathe, and choose reason. These are the battles that build discipline, and no one sees them. There are no medals for waking up early, no applause for skipping distractions, no fame for doing the right thing when no one is watching. But that is the Stoic path. The reward is not recognition. The reward is the person you become. To be disciplined is to commit to a higher standard. It is to live by principles instead of passions. It is to know that every decision is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you say no to vice, you are saying yes to virtue. When you stay on task despite boredom, you are training your mind to obey your will. When you hold your tongue in anger, you are mastering the self instead of being mastered by emotion. This is not cold detachment. This is strength. This is power. This is what the Stoics called virtue, and for them, virtue was the only true good. The modern individual often believes that freedom is doing whatever one wants. The Stoics taught that true freedom is wanting only what is in your control and needing nothing outside of it. Discipline is the bridge between chaos and order. It is the mechanism by which a scattered life becomes a focused one. A man without discipline is a slave to every impulse, every mood, every external circumstance. But a man with discipline becomes sovereign. He becomes the master of his days. He walks not in reaction, but in intention. His habits are not dictated by convenience, but by character. His words are not driven by impulse, but by wisdom. Every day presents a choice, comfort or growth, the path of least resistance, or the narrow road of purpose. Discipline is choosing growth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. The Stoic disciplines himself not out of self-hate, but out of self-respect. He knows that greatness is not stumbled upon. It is forged in the fire of repetition, perseverance, and self-denial. You do not become excellent by chance. You become excellent by consistent, focused effort. That is the law. That is the reality. You cannot hack your way to a meaningful life. You must build it, one disciplined choice at a time. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." How much of your life is wasted in procrastination, emotional indulgence, pointless arguments, unearned rest? Discipline is not about working endlessly. It is about making sure your time aligns with your values. It is about prioritizing what matters and eliminating what doesn't. It is about choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. It is about taking full ownership of your time, your energy, your attention. And yes, discipline is lonely. It will separate you. It will make you misunderstood. But that is the cost of excellence. That is the price of mastery. The Stoic does not follow the crowd. He follows reason. He is not driven by trends. He is anchored by timeless truths. In a world chasing validation, he builds character. In a world chasing comfort, he embraces challenge. In a world of noise, he cultivates silence. Discipline is not just a tool for productivity. It is the foundation of integrity. It is how you earn your own respect. It is how you silence the inner critic, not by shouting over it, but by proving it wrong through action. The Stoic does not need motivation. He has commitment. He does not wait for the right mood. He creates the right mindset, and that mindset is forged in the daily practice of discipline. Discipline is the art of aligning your actions with your values, regardless of how you feel in the moment. It is the silent engine behind every great achievement, the invisible force that shapes destinies while others are still waiting for the perfect time to begin. The Stoic tradition doesn't romanticize discipline, it demands it. It doesn't view discipline as an optional enhancement to a good life, but as a fundamental pillar. Without it, the Stoic believes, a person becomes like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by every emotion, every impulse, every whim of the world around them. The disciplined person, by contrast, becomes immovable in purpose, steady in storms, and powerful in stillness. Epictetus taught that the true goal is not to control the world, but to control ourselves. That is the only true freedom. To do that, we must first recognize where our power ends and where it begins. The Stoic doesn't waste energy on things outside of his control. Instead, he narrows his focus to the inner world, his habits, his thoughts, his reactions, his discipline. He does not seek praise because praise is outside his control. He does not fear criticism because criticism is outside his control. He does not chase approval because approval is never guaranteed. But his actions, those are his domain. His choices, his effort, his attitude, these belong to him, and so he trains them with intensity. Discipline, to the Stoic, is training. Every moment of discomfort, every situation that demands restraint, every urge resisted is an opportunity to practice. Life itself is the dojo. There is no final exam, no graduation. There is only the constant choice to rise above base instinct and live according to higher principles. The Stoics believed that virtue is the only true good, and discipline is the guardian of virtue. Without discipline, wisdom is idle, courage is sporadic, temperance is inconsistent, and justice is unreliable. But with discipline, each of those virtues becomes actionable, visible, alive. It begins with the body. Seneca wrote about fasting, about enduring cold, about practicing poverty, not because suffering is noble in itself, but because comfort breeds weakness when left unchecked. The body, when coddled, becomes soft. The mind, when indulged, becomes dull. The soul, when undisciplined, becomes chaotic. That's why Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, to build resilience, to prove to themselves that they were not owned by their appetites, to make sure that if fortune ever turned against them, they would be ready. The modern individual runs from discomfort. The Stoic runs toward it, not recklessly, not masochistically, but deliberately, because within discomfort lies strength, within denial lies clarity, within repetition lies transformation. But discipline isn't just about suffering, it's about structure. The Stoic constructs his life like a craftsman, carefully designing his day to serve a higher aim. He wakes not at random, but with intention. He begins his morning with reflection, not distraction. He plans his tasks not based on urgency, but based on alignment with purpose. He eats not to indulge, but to sustain. He trains his body not for vanity, but for utility. Every aspect of his life becomes an expression of order, not because he's trying to be perfect, but because he's refusing to drift. Drifting is death to the disciplined. It is a slow decay of potential. The Stoic is not afraid of exhaustion. He is afraid of wasting his brief time on earth. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, and yet his greatest concern was not conquest or politics. It was self-mastery. In his personal writings, he constantly reminded himself to stay grounded, to avoid distraction, to act justly, to speak truthfully, and to resist the temptation of ego. He understood that discipline wasn't reserved for monks and soldiers. It was the key to leading well, living well, and dying well. He would say to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That urgency, that awareness of mortality, sharpened his discipline. It reminded him that every moment is a test, and he did not want to fail that test, not by being lazy, not by being angry, not by being weak. Modern society encourages indulgence. The messages we receive daily tell us to chase pleasure, to avoid pain, to follow our feelings, but the Stoic sees through that illusion. He knows that feelings are fleeting, but consequences are lasting. He knows that a moment of pleasure can cost a year of regret. He knows that self-control is the highest form of freedom. To tell yourself no when every part of you screams yes, that is real strength. To persist in your practice when no one is watching, that is real discipline. To say, "I will not betray my values," even when it's hard, that is real virtue. And so, the Stoic does not expect ease, he expects resistance. He welcomes it, because resistance is the forge. Discipline is not found in the absence of challenge. It is forged in the presence of it. The heavier the burden, the stronger the back, the greater the temptation, the purer the triumph. The Stoic disciplines his habits because he knows that in moments of stress, we do not rise to the occasion. We fall to the level of our training, so he trains hard. He disciplines his thoughts so that when chaos comes, he is already calm. He disciplines his schedule so that when opportunity knocks, he is already prepared. He disciplines his desires so that when pleasure whispers, he can walk away. There is no final destination to discipline. You don't arrive, you evolve, you deepen, you sharpen. The Stoic begins again every morning. He asks himself, what is the right thing to do today? And then he does it, whether he feels like it or not. This is not robotic behavior. This is freedom from slavery to emotions. Feelings are acknowledged but not obeyed. Desires are noticed but not idolized. The disciplined Stoic moves by principle, not impulse. By truth, not trend. By clarity, not chaos. The Stoic knows that real power is not loud. It is silent, still, unwavering. That is the nature of discipline. It doesn't need to be broadcast. It is worn in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you keep your word. Discipline speaks through action. It is visible in the habits that others overlook. It is etched into your routine, your posture, your presence. The world might not understand it, might even mock it, but that doesn't matter. The disciplined man does not live to be understood. He lives to fulfill his purpose, and when he falters, and he will, he does not wallow, he begins again, because discipline is not perfection, it is perseverance. It is the refusal to quit, the refusal to surrender to mood, fatigue, or failure. Each stumble is a lesson, each failure is fuel. The Stoic writes his principles not in sand, but in stone, and every day he returns to them, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Because the undisciplined life is not free, it is chaotic, it is scattered, it is a slave to circumstance. The disciplined life, however, is intentional, it is powerful, it is unshaken by noise. The Stoic path is a daily commitment to mastery over the self. It begins not in the grand moments, but in the quiet, invisible decisions that stack, day after day, into character. The Stoic understands that the root of all transformation lies not in chance or luck, but in disciplined, deliberate living. A man who wishes to rise above the average cannot afford to live like the average. He cannot sleep through life and expect to awaken one day to greatness. He cannot drift and expect to arrive at his purpose. He must train himself to see time as precious, every minute as currency, every hour as opportunity. Discipline is not simply about control. It is about conservation. It is about conserving energy for what matters, conserving focus for what builds, conserving emotion for what deserves it. The Stoic's discipline is not driven by external pressure, but by internal standards. He does not rely on deadlines, alarms, or consequences to guide his behavior. He moves with direction because he has already determined what matters most. He does not need to be reminded of his goals because he carries them in his blood. His actions are not reactions to the world's noise. They are extensions of his values. He chooses what to do, when to do it, and how to do it based on principles that are unshakable. His days are not chaotic because his mind is not chaotic, and his mind is not chaotic because he has trained it through effort, sacrifice, and repetition. The Stoic does not fear boredom. He welcomes it, because he knows that most people seek novelty as an escape from discipline. They jump from project to project, habit to habit, chasing the dopamine of new beginnings, but abandoning the hard work of consistency. But the Stoic is different. He embraces repetition. He knows that mastery is found in the mundane. He understands that doing the same thing 1,000 times with full attention builds more strength than doing 1,000 different things halfway. His life may appear simple on the surface, rising early, training daily, reflecting often, but this simplicity is the result of depth, not shallowness. He has stripped away what doesn't matter so he can pour his whole self into what does. He is not interested in shortcuts. He is not seduced by hacks or promises of easy success. He knows that anything earned without effort is quickly lost. He does not measure his progress by applause or affirmation, but by the quiet satisfaction of keeping his word to himself. He sets goals not to impress others, but to sharpen his focus. He disciplines his language, understanding that words shape thoughts and thoughts shape behavior. He chooses silence when others argue, focus when others scroll, action when others hesitate. And in doing so, he becomes something rare, someone who can be trusted, someone who is dependable, someone whose presence demands respect without asking for it. In moments of temptation, the Stoic returns to reason. He does not argue with his lower nature. He replaces it. He remembers that the body wants comfort, the ego wants attention, but the soul wants growth. So he chooses discomfort when it builds resilience. He chooses obscurity when it builds strength. He chooses solitude when it builds clarity. He is not at war with the world. He is at peace with his purpose, and that peace is what gives him power. Because the man who does not need to be entertained, praised, or distracted is the man who cannot be controlled, the Stoic builds routines not because he is robotic, but because he values freedom. He knows that true freedom is not the absence of structure, but the result of it. His morning is planned so that his day begins with clarity. His environment is clean because he refuses to live in chaos. His mind is ordered because his actions are intentional. He reviews his day each night, not out of guilt, but out of desire to improve. He is not obsessed with perfection, but he refuses to be careless. He expects setbacks, but he does not surrender to them. He treats each failure as data, each mistake as training, each obstacle as an invitation to rise higher. The Stoic surrounds himself with few, but with those who sharpen him. He is not interested in shallow praise or superficial friendships. He seeks depth, truth, and iron that sharpens iron. He listens more than he speaks, and when he speaks, his words carry weight. He does not waste energy proving himself. His life is his proof, and in a world full of noise, the man of discipline becomes a signal. He becomes the one others look to when chaos comes. He becomes the one who stands when others fall. Not because he's stronger, smarter, or luckier, but because he has trained longer, sacrificed more, and made discipline his daily practice. He does not compare himself to others. He competes only with his past self. He knows that envy distracts and comparison poisons progress. He does not need to be the best, only to be better than he was yesterday. He is patient with growth, but ruthless with excuses. He forgives himself for failure, but does not let himself off the hook. He treats discipline like a craft, something to be refined, shaped, and strengthened over time. He protects his mind like a warrior protects his weapon. He does not feed it with garbage, does not expose it to nonsense. He curates what he consumes, knowing that input shapes output. In moments of doubt, the Stoic does not collapse. He retreats into stillness. He remembers that feelings are not facts, that the mind can be trained, and that storms do not last. He does not need constant motivation because he has cultivated something deeper resolve. Motivation is fleeting. Resolve is earned, and the Stoic has earned it by showing up again and again on the days he wanted to quit. He does not fear hard work. He fears a wasted life, and so he works hard, not for vanity, but for legacy. He sees time as his most sacred possession. He does not waste it chasing applause, seeking revenge, or proving others wrong. He uses it to build, to refine, to serve, to become. His discipline is not about punishment. It is about purpose. It is about living so precisely that there is no room left for regret. He does not leave his growth to chance. He creates it by design. The Stoic's blueprint for discipline is not complex. It is simple, but it is relentless. Wake up, do what matters, control what you can, let go of what you can't, repeat. And within this rhythm, this structure, this practice, the Stoic becomes unshakable.